Buying and selling homes by auction is a popular method here in New Zealand. However, the auction process can be a bit overwhelming and intimidating, especially for first home buyers who have had no experience with this before. In today's video, I'm going to be exploring everything that you need to know about buying a house via auction. I'll be covering what you need to do before you can bid at auction, to what actually happens on the day of the auction, to what to expect after the auction. I'm hoping by the end of this video you'll completely understand the process involved so that you can confidently buy a house at auction. Make sure you stick around until the end, as I'll be sharing some hot tips for buying at auction to help you win your new home. As always, feel free to skip around the timestamps to save time. Let's get into it. First up, I think it's really important to understand what a property auction actually is. In a nutshell, it's a fast-paced public sale of a property. The property is sold to the buyer with the highest bid after the seller's reserve price has been met. If you haven't been to an auction before, then I'd highly recommend attending one as a spectator so you can get an understanding of how they actually work. If you win an auction, then you're committed to purchasing the property, and you usually pay the deposit for the property that is required on the day of the auction. Next up, let's look at what you need to do prior to bidding at auction. You will need to be pre-approved before you can bid at auction. So this is when you'll need to meet with your mortgage advisor and get your application submitted to the bank and pre-approved. Your pre-approval will outline any conditions that will need to be met prior to you being able to bid at auction. It's important that you read your pre-approval letter carefully so that you have a really good understanding of what is required to be met before you can bid at auction. If there's anything that you're not clear on, make sure that you talk to your mortgage advisor about it. Your mortgage advisor will be able to explain to you everything that you need to do and what conditions need to be met. The next step is to go through and tick off all the conditions on your pre-approval. The last remaining condition will be the bank seeing a signed sale and purchase agreement. This can't happen until after the auction. However, you need to provide the draft sale and purchase agreement to the bank to ensure that they're happy with any terms and conditions that are on the sale and purchase agreement before the auction. When a house is for sale via auction, buyers will receive an auction pack when they register their interest in the property with the sales agent. This will include the terms and conditions of the auction, a copy of the sale and purchase agreement, and any other information about the property. Make sure that you send everything through to your mortgage advisor so they can pass it on to the bank for you. The bank will then let you know if the property is acceptable and if there's anything else that needs to be provided. Sometimes, depending on the property type, they may require a registered valuation or a building report or a weather tightness report. If there's anything else that the bank does request, this will need to be provided prior to you being able to bid at auction. To ensure you have enough time to provide anything else that may be required by the bank, it pays to submit the auction agreement well ahead of the actual auction date. This will ensure that you have enough time to organise anything that you might need to ahead of the auction. If you want to change anything in the agreement or add any conditions to the sale, then you'll need to use what's called a variation of agreement. This also needs to be done before the auction. Talk to the agent and your lawyer about any changes that you're wanting to make. The seller will then decide if they're happy to accept any conditions or changes that you're proposing. Auctions are unconditional, so you need to learn as much as you can about the property before you bid at auction or before making a pre-auction offer. Ask your lawyer to review or help you understand any information that you get about the property before the auction. There are a couple of things that I'd recommend that you do, and that is to work out the value of the property, do a title search, get council information, check the house, land, and neighbourhood thoroughly, and get a property inspection report or a building report for your own peace of mind. Next up, let's discuss the pre-auction offer process. So what this is basically an offer that is made before the auction date. If the seller is willing to accept the offer, then the auction date can be moved forward to an earlier date than the advertised date, or the sale and purchase agreement can be signed and the auction can actually be cancelled. Sellers can indicate that they may be willing to accept a pre-auction offer by terms like unless sold prior in their advertising. This doesn't necessarily mean that a property can't be sold ahead of the auction date if the wording is not included. A seller can choose to sell the property at any stage during the selling process by signing a sale and purchase agreement. If you've spoken with the agent and registered your interest in the property, then they should let you know if a pre-auction offer is made by another buyer and if it's accepted by the seller. If you haven't registered your interest, then you won't be notified. If the auction is held earlier than advertised based on a pre-auction offer being accepted, then that offer becomes the starting bid. The property can then sell at any time after that first bid. If you want to make a pre-auction offer, then make sure you talk to your lawyer and also the agents to let them know. Make sure to check the auction's terms and conditions so that you can understand if you can withdraw a pre-auction offer. If you can't, your pre-auction offer becomes the first bid once the auction started, and then you can then let the auctioneer know that you wish to withdraw your bid. Let's now look at how you can bid at auction if you can't actually attend the auction. If the auction is going to be held in person and you can't actually attend, there are a few ways that you can still bid as a buyer. The first way is by being a phone bidder. If you're interested in bidding by phone on the day, then you should register your interest with the agent. You'll likely be asked to sign a telephone bidding authority, which will enable the agent to bid on your behalf. It's usually given to the auctioneer, who will then let all the other bidders know that phone bidders are present. Phone bidders will be approved by the seller in advance of the auction. Phone bidding can also take place online via video conferencing. This allows buyers to see other bidders who are present and also the auctioneer. The other way that a buyer can bid if they can't be present is to nominate someone to bid on your behalf. You may prefer to have someone that you know and trust bidding on your behalf, such as a family member or even your lawyer. I'd recommend, if it's possible, to find someone to bid on your behalf that has experience with auctions and has bought property before. You should make sure that they have written permission to bid on your behalf and that they understand the maximum amount that you're willing to bid to. Next up, let's look at the actual auction and what to expect on the day. Auctions can be held in many different places. They could be at the property that's being sold, they could be at the real estate agent's offices, they could be at the auctioneer rooms, or even online. The information about where the auction's actually going to be held will be included in the advertising for the property. When you arrive at the auction, you may need to register your interest with the agent. You may get a bidder's number and be told when the auction will start. If you're bidding at an online auction, then registration may also take place online. Make sure that you check with the agent if you need to download any specific apps or software to participate in the auction. If you'd like support at the auction, make sure that you plan this ahead of time. You could ask a friend or a family member to attend the auction with you. You could also ask the listing agent to help you. However, do keep in mind that they work for the seller, not the buyers. Before the auction, the seller will set a reserve price, and this is a price that the auctioneer knows but does not share with the buyers. The reserve price is the minimum price that the seller will accept for the property. Before the bidding starts, the auctioneer will read aloud the terms and conditions of the auction, announce any important issues with the property, state whether the seller may bid during the auction, which is called a vendor bid, and also state whether there are any phone bidders present. Let's just touch on what a vendor bid actually is a little bit further. Before the bids reach reserve, the seller or representative can bid on the property to encourage buyers closer to that reserve price. And this is what's known as a vendor bid. The auctioneer must make it really clear when a bid is a vendor bid. Vendor bids are only allowed when the property has a reserve price, the reserve price hasn't been reached, and the bid is clearly identified by the auctioneer as a vendor bid. At the auction, buyers put forward the price that they're willing to pay, which is known as bids. Each bid needs to be higher than the previous bid. The auctioneer decides the minimum amount that you can increase your bid by. The auctioneer works for the seller so that they can get the highest bid possible. Bidding generally often starts below the reserve price, and anyone can start with the first bid. Buyers bidding by phone will be updated by the agent assigned to them every time that a bid is placed. If you are bidding by phone, you should make it really clear to the agent at which time they should make a bid for you. If you are bidding at an online auction, you should be aware that there could be a delay on your screen. You may need to refresh your page to see the latest bids. Once the reserve price has been met, then the highest bidder wins the auction. The winning bidder signs the sale and purchase agreement and pays their deposit. The auctioneer may be able to sign the sale and purchase agreement on behalf of the highest bidder if this is outlined in the auction conditions. Now, if the bids don't reach the reserve price, there are usually 3 options. The first option is that the seller may decide to sell at a lower price than the reserve price. The second option is that the auctioneer may take the highest bidder to a private room to negotiate a higher bid. If the seller accepts this new higher bid, then everyone comes back to the room to the auction, and the auction resumes with this higher bid being the reserve price. This means that the property can then sell at any time. The third option is that the property may be passed in. What this means is that the property has not sold at auction and the seller may decide to try and sell via another sales method. Now let's look at what happens after you've won the auction. If you win the auction, you'll be asked to sign the sale and purchase agreement and also pay the deposit as soon as possible, even if you've been bidding by phone or online. As mentioned, the auctioneer may also sign the sale and purchase agreement on your behalf if this is stated in the auction conditions. Any conditions that you agree to before the auction need to be met in the timeframes that you and the seller have agreed upon. The conditions must be agreed upon by all parties prior to bidding at auction. If the property is not sold, then the highest bidder may be able to negotiate with the seller via the agent after the auction's finished. The auction rules may still apply after the auction, so you need to make sure that the offer that you're making is going to be unconditional. Make sure that you send your signed sale and purchase agreement through to your mortgage advisor as soon as possible. Once you've done this, your advisor will then be able to negotiate with the bank on any interest rates on offer and also potentially any cashback that may be on offer for you. You will then meet with your mortgage advisor to discuss the best structure for you and your mortgage. Once your loan structure has been finalized, it gets submitted through to the bank, and then they will prepare documents to be sent through to your lawyer for signing. The bank may also call you to arrange a time for you to go into one of the branches to set up new bank accounts if required. Your solicitor will also call you to arrange a time for you to come in and see them to sign your loan documents. You will also need to ensure that you complete your pre-settlement inspection. If you aren't sure how to complete this, then I have a great video which outlines everything that you need to know to complete your pre-settlement inspection and what to look for, which I'll link up over here and also down in the description box. On settlement day, your solicitor will let you know as soon as the money's been transferred, and then you'll be able to collect the keys to your new home as soon as this has happened. Now let's look at some hot tips for buying at auction. First up, there are 3 figures that you need to have in mind before you bid at an auction. Number 1 is the market value of the property. Number 2 is what you're willing to pay for the property. And number 3 is a top dollar that you would compete for. You want to be really clear on what your walking away price is. My next tip is to make sure that you get to the auction early. You don't want to miss out on your dream home because you're running late or you couldn't find a car park. On the auction day, make sure that you introduce yourself to the auctioneer and let yourself be known so that they know to look out for you. My next tip is when your listing comes on, then make sure that you lead the charge and place that first bid. Putting in the first bid and knocking your opposition over is a good tactic to winning the auction. My next tip is when another bidder comes in with their bid, make sure that you come back with a counter bid quickly and decisively. This gives the impression that you've got funds and you're there to buy the property no matter what. It can also be a tactic to discourage other buyers. As we've also learned today, the auctioneer can also place vendor bids. This is how you know that the reserve price has not yet been met. If he's placed a vendor bid and you're the only one interested in bidding, then hold back because in the end, you're just outbidding yourself. My last tip is to make sure that your deposit is sorted well in advance. The deposit is usually 10% and is taken by a check or an electronic bank deposit. Remember that banks may sometimes be closed for public holidays and weekends, so make sure that you are organized in advance and also double check if you have a limit transfer on your internet banking. I hope now that you understand the auction process so that you can confidently bid and win the house of your dreams. If you have purchased by auction or are planning to purchase by auction, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.